Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Microphone Money Podcast, and welcome to episode number 37. Well, today, let's talk about convincing your spouse that you are for real when it comes to your podcasting business. So today, we're not talking about nuts and bolts. We're not talking about equipment. We're not talking about advertisers. We're not talking about ways to find decision makers. We're not talking about any about that. We're talking about the most important decision maker in your life other than yourself, and that, of course, is going to be your spouse, your significant other. How do you convince them that you are for real? Now, if you'll go back in my previous episode, you'll know that I've talked about being very guarded about who you share your dream with, who you share your idea with, because there are those black crabs. There are people that are going to bring you down. But you have to, of course, share your dream and your idea with your spouse. Now, if you don't have a spouse, well, then if you get your business going and it's successful before you find a significant other, you'll never have to deal with this. But if you do, or if you will, this is something that's very important. And I've seen people out there asking the question about, what do I tell my wife? What do I tell my husband? How do I convince them? How do I get them on board? And boy, I wish there was just some magic thing you could do, some magic thing I could tell you to do, and that would work, but there really isn't any magic pill. So I've had this topic on my list for a while, and honestly, considering our current circumstances right now, here and today, with this coronavirus and with what's going on with our economy and with everything I'm reading about what people think is going to happen with our economy here coming up, I thought this would be a really great time to cover this. And so I kind of had this on the list for later, but I thought right now is a good time to cover this because there's going to be a lot of fear out there. And now, by the way, when you're going to go start your own business, your spouse, especially if you haven't been an entrepreneur for the entirety of your relationship, your spouse is going to be scared already. It's a healthy fear. It's a fear of the unknown. It's a fear of are we checking all the boxes? Are we dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's? All that type of stuff, right? It's not necessarily irrational fear, but it's, people fear change and they fear what they don't know, and they want to be cautious and they want to make sure they're doing everything right so they don't, you don't put yourself back 10 years for one idea or something like that. It makes very good sense, but there's already fear there. Well, you combine that fear that would just naturally be there in the best of circumstances with everything that's going on today in terms of this virus, if you're fearful of getting that or not. But even if you're not fearful of getting the virus, or you're not fearful of bad consequences to you if you get it, there's still the economy and what it's doing to our economy and what that is doing to business opportunities. Like I talked about last week, it's exposing some of the vulnerabilities of this particular business. It just is, and, that's just the way this goes. This is a great business to be in, but you got to understand that like any other business, it ebbs and it flows, and when companies are down in the dollars, marketing budgets, and I've been checking around, talking to PR firms, talking to marketing agencies, continuing to have these discussions, and everybody's telling me the same things. When we hit bad economies, marketing dollars get pulled back. So just with the understanding of that. So with all that said, becoming a full-time podcaster is already a crazy idea. It's already unconventional, and of course, if this is what you're striving for, your spouse is going to have a lot of reservations. There's a high likelihood to that. Now, with a conventional business, let's say you were going to buy a McDonald's, you're going to have a McDonald's, they would probably still have reservations, like have we calculated all the risks? Have we looked at what could happen? What do we have to borrow money? All that type of stuff. But with this business, it's so abstract and it's so unconventional that the likelihood of them having those reservations really goes way, way up. And right now, you've got all the other fear and everything that's going on piled on top of it. That's going to be a tough sell. And right now, by the way, if somebody were to come to me right now and say, hey, I'm looking at quitting my job tomorrow and starting my full-time podcast the next day, right now in these current circumstances, I would probably say, you're going to want to push pause on that. You're going to want to wait and see where this goes. At the very least, at the very best, or the very most, you might want to ride this out until you quit the day job. I'm not saying don't start the podcasting business. If the opportunities are there for you at this moment, in this climate, then yes, take them, of course. But just go through the crazy time where you're doing both. Don't quit the day job right now, because normally I'm not the type of person to sit there and go, the stable job and the security is what you need. But you know what? Our world has never seen what we're seeing right now. What we're seeing right now, nobody knows. There's not one expert out there who can predict what's going to happen, because nobody has ever seen this. And so certainly, if you've got stability right now, we're in such an unprecedented time that you would want to hold on to that. So with that said, what can we do? How can we turn what this moment is in terms of kind of being a negative, how can we turn it into a positive? And really, with this current set of circumstances, when it's over, when this comes to an end, there's going to be two types of people that are going to talk about this. One type are going to look at themselves as victims. They're going to say, I am a victim of the circumstances that happened during this coronavirus deal. And there's going to be another type that's going to look back and go, man, during this coronavirus deal, I saw an opportunity to do this, or I saw an opportunity to do that, and I took advantage of it. Now, not taking advantage of people, not price gouging, that's not what I'm talking about, but looking and going, all right, here's a new normal. What can I do in this new normal that's going to move me forward? Because those opportunities are going to be there, even with these circumstances. And so you want to be one of those people when we're looking back on this, you go, man, during that coronavirus deal, I really found my way to move me closer to my goal. And here is what I did, and here is how I made it happen. And by the way, all doors are open. All possibilities are open on doing this, that are legal and moral. Right now, I'm looking at a bunch of different ways to do things to move myself forward. I mentioned last week the word job. I haven't had a job since 2013. That's the last time I had a job. Yes, I still teach 1 or 2 classes a semester because I love to teach, but it's not a job. It's a passion project, and I happen to get revenue for it. I haven't had a job since 2013, so we're at 7 years, and now I'm talking about a job. Now, why? Because I have all possibilities. I am not closing my mind at all. All possibilities are open to me in terms of how to come out on the back end of this coronavirus deal and go, wow, I really took advantage of an opportunity during this coronavirus thing, and it is setting me up for where my future goals are. Now, my podcasting business is slowing down because of what's going on in the economy. I already know that's a fact. I mean, look at Marriott hotels. They're laying off, my goodness, I should say furloughing, something, did they say 40,000 people? I mean, it's just amazing, right? A company that's doing that, if they're in your industry umbrella, they're not starting a podcast with you during this. It's not happening. It's not happening unless, my old days as a police officer, I learned to never say never. So unless there is some direction or path towards communicating with people through the crisis they've identified, and that's a podcast. But I think that the chances of that are really, really slim. So my business is slowing down right now. Starting a business is going to be difficult right now. So I've got all possibilities open to help move me towards the direction I want to go. Now, so what else is going on right now? Well, the stock market is on sale. Now, other people are going to say the stock market is crashing. Other people are going to say the economy is crashing. We're going into a recession, maybe a depression. Who knows? True. But it's also on sale. It's also on sale. And so I'm looking at, if this is a long-term, sustained down period for the stock market, I know where it's been and I know where it's going back to eventually. I may go get a job. Honestly, I may go get a job because my podcasting business is slowing down. I'm not going to stop doing it by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm willing to go back into the crazy period. I'm going to voluntarily go back into the crazy period where I have a job and I've got my business, and I'm going to take every cent I can from that job and I'm going to put it in the stock market, and I'm going to buy and hold while it's on sale. Now, that's outside the box. For an entrepreneur, a guy who hasn't had a job in 7 years, I may take a job just so I can do that, just so I can take extra disposable income and put it in because it's on such a big sale. And when we come back out and we get back to 28,000 or 30,000 in the Dow Jones, well, if I've done that at 18 or 19,000, that's pretty good, right? That's 30 some odd percent growth, return on that investment. I may do that. So there's no right or wrong. I mean, nobody knows what this is. Nobody's ever seen it before. And for you, trying to find a way to your goals to come out better and achieve your goals later, hey, some short-term craziness is probably worth it. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm considering voluntarily going back into that crazy period, that transitional period where you've got the side business that's busy and the full-time job that's busy, just so I can take that salary from the full-time job and devote it all to the stock market. So who knows? There's no right or wrong, but there are people, when we get done with this, who are going to look back and they're going to go, I was a victim. And there's people who are going to look back and they're going to go, man, I busted my butt during that thing to take advantage of whatever opportunity was available to me. Be that person. Be that person who's going to look back and go, hey, here's what I did when this was going on. Okay. So I hope you'll be one of these people who finds an opportunity. And here's one of the things that you can be doing during this crisis. And one of those things you can be doing is convincing your spouse, your parents, your siblings, whoever it may be, but for sure your spouse, if you have one, that you are for real in this pursuit of this full-time podcasting business. Now, again, I don't know how long this is going to last, but one thing is for sure, no matter when it ends, your spouse is going to have to really believe in what you're doing before they say, yes, go ahead, quit your day job and do nothing but podcasting. That's a big sell for your spouse, unless your spouse is doing this with you, unless your spouse is a natural-born entrepreneur. But if you're a person like me, who you and your spouse were conventional 40-hour-a-week job people, and you're saying, I don't want that lifestyle anymore, I want to break out of that, and I want to do this, well, then you're going to have some convincing to do. That's okay. It can be done. So, how do you show your spouse that you are serious? Well, I put a photo up. I'm putting it up on the Facebook page. It's up on the website. But there's a photo of the keyboard of my MacBook Pro, my Apple MacBook Pro. Now, this photo is about 7 months old. I took it last summer. And the photo, it's funny. It's a photo of my keyboard, but it means so much to me. Because back in the summer of 2014, when I had decided I was going to start this podcast. Now, or not this podcast, the Off-Farm Income podcast. When I had made that decision, by no stretch of the imagination was I trying to sell my wife on me becoming a full-time podcaster and quitting what then was my full-time business because I was already an entrepreneur. But I was trying to convince her to let me spend about $2,500 getting the equipment I wanted to start this podcast and to take that time it was going to take me to make the podcast away from our family. Now, I bought back then what felt like a very expensive purchase to me, a $1,400 MacBook Pro. And I bought it for two reasons. One, it came with GarageBand, and that's what I was going to use to edit. And two, MacBook Pros or Macs had a reputation for basically being bulletproof, and people with viruses weren't targeting them because there were so few of them on the market compared to PCs and Windows-based platforms that the virus people, all those people, they were targeting the PCs with the Windows platform. So I wanted something that was going to be trouble-free, that was going to continue to work well, and it already came with the editing software I could use. The other thing is, my wife and I had gone through probably 3 or 4 inexpensive PC laptops, Windows-based laptops, and they always, when you got a lot of memory on them, when you started building up that memory on them, or taking that storage that was on them, and by the way, you can probably tell by the way I'm talking, I'm not a computer person, but when they were getting that storage on them, they would always slow down, and they would take forever to start up, and then they would fail, and this would happen, and that would happen, and all, they get viruses and all this type of stuff, and I just didn't want to deal with that hassle at all, and I knew, because I was going to be creating WAV files and MP3 files for the podcast, that I was going to be putting a lot of demands on the computer. I was going to be using a lot of storage. And I just thought, man, I do not want to have my computer crash and have this important information, these interviews I'm going to be conducting saved on there that I need. Even if I've got it backed up, my computer crashes, I'm out of business for a couple days, right? So I chose to buy the MacBook Pro. I had to sell Autumn on that. And honestly, I had to sell myself on it because, you could go down to Best Buy and you could find a Windows-based PC laptop for $350. Here, this one was $1,400. I'd never used a Mac. So I was doing this all based on things I had read and heard people talked about. So I had to convince myself, I had to convince Autumn. And so the reason this picture of my keyboard is important for me is because if you look at it, there's several keys in the picture that are worn out. You cannot read what key they are anymore. I think it's the S and the C. Oh, no, it's not the C. I can see the C. So maybe it's the E and the S, the A starting to wear out. And I've worn the ink or whatever it is off of these keys because I have typed on these keys so much. So obviously Autumn said yes. I bought the MacBook Pro, and I've been using that since the summer of 2014. And and obviously she said yes to that, and so I've used it so much. So since the purchase of this computer in 2014, I've produced over 1,000 podcast episodes, become a radio broadcaster, I've become a podcast consultant, a producer. I've been hired to host a podcast for one of the largest agricultural companies in the world. And when I look at this picture of the keyboard, what I see is proof. And I see proof that you can look at in actual physical form. So the paint is worn out, let's see, on the E, the A, the S, and the O keys. From all of the show notes, the blog posts, the workbooks, the emails, the social media posts, everything that I have written as part of my podcasting business. All of the typing I've done on this computer. And I'm using this picture and I'm using this story as a symbol of the way you can convince your spouse that you're for real. Okay? I bought this computer in 2014. She said, yes, go for it. Now, in the back of her mind, was she thinking this is not legit, but I'm going to trust my husband? I don't know. Maybe. But here's what I do know, is that almost 6 years later, well, I got the keyboard repaired, or the keys replaced. So 6 years later, last summer, she could look at my computer and she could see physical evidence of how much work I had done on this computer. That's the proof that I am talking about. If you're trying to convince your spouse that starting your own podcast business is a good idea, then be prepared to do the metaphorical equivalent of writing several novels on your own in whatever way your business demands. I have probably written the equivalent of 10 novels on this keyboard, and by the way, never had a problem with this computer since we made this purchase. I was right on both fronts. The computer was bulletproof, and it was the right way to go. And there's no question now that if my wife ever came to me and said, I don't think the podcasting business is the right business, it wouldn't be because I wasn't serious about it. That has been proven. I mean, I've worn out the keys on the keyboard. So, and by the way, I know this has to do with equipment. What I'm trying to get across here is if you want to convince your spouse this is the right thing for you to do, you convince your spouse by doing it. You don't convince them by talking them into it or something like that. But when it comes to equipment, by the way, when you're starting out, be careful, be cautious at the beginning about buying equipment. This is really all I bought, except I bought a mixer, a digital recorder, and a microphone. I bought an inexpensive microphone to start out. Only buy what you need to get started, and don't get caught up in the excitement of having a reason to buy a bunch of new stuff. Hold yourself back and show your spouse that you don't take spending this money lightly. Now, let me just tell you a quick couple stories. I will see a truck going down the road because I used to be in this field, basically, of entrepreneurship. So I will see a truck going down the road, and I'll look at it. It'll be a brand new diesel Ford pickup pulling a trailer with a bunch of lawn equipment, weed whackers, lawnmowers, that type of stuff in the back. And they've got a sign or a sticker, maybe a wrap on the pickup saying, like John's Lawn Care, serving you since 2020 or something like that. And I cringe because I go, man, this person just started this business. They're just kicking this business. They're an owner-operator, and they got so excited about starting their business and so caught up in the cool stuff you get to buy when you're starting a business, they bought an $80,000 pickup. Oh, no. It's just, this business is doomed for failure. You can't cover an $80,000 pickup on a startup lawn business. Now, you might in 3 years when you got a crew and a couple hundred lawns you're doing, but not right now. I had a friend who shall remain nameless. We were going on a hunting trip. A bunch of us, a big group of friends were going. And he showed up with like $5,000 of camera equipment. I mean, high-end stuff, and this is years ago. This is approaching 20 years ago. High-end camera equipment, lots of it. And we're like, okay, what's the deal here? What's all this equipment for? Well, I'm going to become a hunting journalist. I'm going to film this whole thing. I'm going to make videos. I'm going to sell them. I'm going to have videos out everywhere. People are going to learn to hunt from me, this, that, and the other. Now, we all knew this individual. We've all known him for a long time, and we all kind of, to ourselves, cringed a little bit and just went, oh, man, come on. All this brand new equipment, it's all depreciating, and you don't have a business yet. It's not going yet, and we'd seen our friend kind of go through this cycle a couple of different times in different ways. And certainly, sure enough, this business it's never happened. It's never got off the ground. But man, all that money was invested and spent into it at the get-go because it's exciting at the beginning of your business, right? It is exciting at the beginning of your business to go out and buy a lot of cool stuff. And it feels like it's not being frivolous. It feels like you're not squandering the money because it's all for this business that you're convinced is going to work. Don't do that. That is not going to convince your spouse, and that's going to drive your spouse further down the road of not really truly believing you're sincere. If you're sincere about wanting this business to succeed, then start on a shoestring. Start with used equipment. Start with what you can get by with and get started with. And remember that no one's ever going to listen to your first 10 episodes and hear poor audio quality and go, oh, we're not hiring them. They're going to listen to what you're doing today. So don't make this mistake, because if you start spending all of your savings on all this flashy, awesome new equipment that you don't really need, but you're convincing your spouse that you do, they're going to see through that, and they're going to know what's really motivating you. It's not the entrepreneurship. It's not the business idea. It's the cool stuff, right? Man, I see people on Facebook who are just starting their podcasts, and they put pictures up of their studios they've built because they're so proud of them, and they should be because their studios are phenomenal. And I'm looking at the pictures of their studios, and I'm going, how much money did you put into that? I mean, if you want to check out my studio, you can look at my videos on Facebook. You can look at my videos on YouTube. My studio is nothing special. Nothing special. Video's not where it's not, I'm on video because I think I need to be, but that is not my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse is audio only. I don't have that great of a studio. I've got a great mic now, but one of my clients bought this microphone for me. I've got a Heil PR, I think it's a PR 40. I'm looking here as I'm talking. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's one of the top of the line mics, and a client bought it for me. I never even bought that. I've got the same equipment that I started with in 2014, save for this microphone. Now, I started doing some remote stuff a while back, so I bought an additional Audio Technica microphone. So I have two of those that I started with. They cost like $60 a piece, and then I bought some better mic stands for when I go and I do mobile stuff. So I added those on, but off of Amazon, inexpensive. What I'm saying is, when it comes to convincing your spouse that you're serious about doing this, you need to demonstrate. Words don't matter here. Words do not matter. Actions matter. Deeds matter, not words. Okay? So your commitment, your actions, your focus, only spending what is absolutely necessary, that is what's going to convince your spouse that you're serious. And again, if you rationalize the purchase of equipment that's not absolutely necessary to get started, I'm not saying you're never going to get it, but you don't need it right up front. They're going to see through it, and whether or not they voice it, they're going to know that you're not as serious as you should be. Now, they may go along with you for this one, but if this one doesn't work, the next time you come around and you want to do this, they're probably not going along. So, man, boil this down to the basics and get really serious with yourself about this. Now, buying my computer was risky, I thought. If those keys were not worn out today, or at least last summer when I got this done, then my wife probably would think that I had just used the business idea as an excuse to buy a cool new computer, honestly. And if that had happened, of course, the next time that I had an idea, she would have thought back to this brand new looking computer that was collecting dust and not being used that cost $1,400, and she would have probably said no. But she can't do that now. Not for that reason. She can't. She can never challenge me on my commitment to this business because, man, I have proven that with that shoe leather, walking those streets, those metaphorical streets, every single day. And by the way, this computer has paid me back a ton. I wore out the keyboard once, but there is a long list of clients that were developed from this computer, and that list grows every year. We'll see what happens this year. So this is how I convinced my wife, and this is how you are going to convince your spouse. You just got to do it. You just got to prove it. You've got to be already up working on your podcast when she or he gets up in the morning. You've got to come to bed late and have them go, "Why'd you come to bed so late last night?" I was working on the podcast. And you do that so you're not robbing time away from the family. This is a very low overhead business. And so basically, you can do this for very little money taken away from your family's budget and very little time taken away from your family's budget if you make those sacrifices and you work around your family time. That's how you're going to prove this to your spouse and let them know that you're for real. And by the way, get them on board because your spouse cares about you. And if they see you're this devoted to an idea, they're going to want to see you succeed and do it. They want you to be happy. So I'm sorry, I cannot offer you any trick of the trade or something like that to make your spouse see what you see. But the only thing you're going to be able to do is just put in the hours of the work and the consistency and just demonstrate that devotion. All right. And again, when your spouse finally sees your business growing, when they see your revenue increasing, they see opportunities coming in, they're going to be on board with you. Again, they want you to be happy. They want to see you happy, but they want to see you chasing something that is real. And no amount of words are ever going to come close to convincing them or I should say, in the way that the hours of hard work and real results are going to do. So, everybody, during this coronavirus deal, here's what I think. You can take the pressure off of yourself in terms of trying to build your business for while this is going on. Because you can be putting the feelers out there, but I don't think you're going to gain clients during this time. Now, prove me wrong. That would be awesome. I would love to hear about it. And I would love to know how you did it, by the way, because this is a challenging time. But during this time, you can be putting in the time. You can be developing great content. You can be putting together a great show. You can be developing your online resume and your catalog of shows. And you can be putting all of that together, and you can be demonstrating to your spouse that you are for real about this. That is essential for you to be successful. If you're in a marriage, you've got a significant other, man, that is absolutely essential to have your spouse on board. There is something you can be doing right now during this coronavirus deal. Even if you can't be gaining clients, you can be laying the groundwork to a successful business going forward. All right, everybody, we will be back next week. Hopefully we're coming out of this thing, but I don't think we're coming out of it that quick. I'll keep you up to date on what I'm doing. Love to hear what you're doing. And we're going to keep moving forward, and we're going to get you ready for when this economy skyrockets. When this is over, you're going to be poised and ready to get your podcasting business going.